Good evening, friends. My name is Jessica Cadiente, and I am the Library Director for the Santa Barbara Public Library System. Welcome to the 2016 Arbuthnot Honor Lecture. It is so wonderful to be speaking to all of you tonight, and we are just thrilled that the Association for Library Service to Children selected Santa Barbara for Pat Mora's talk. Pat Mora's emphasis on getting children to love reading on bicultural and bilingual values resonates so well here in Santa Barbara. It is such an important part of our library's mission to provide extensive and meaningful outreach to our Spanish-speaking families. We are fiercely dedicated at Santa Barbara to all of the children in our community, but we are also committed to their families. We have bilingual story times, bilingual outreach storytellers, parent education specialists, Spanish-speaking library tours, parenting workshops in Spanish, and homework help programs. Pat Mora is an inspiration to our efforts, and her work has helped our library system continue to champion these efforts. To undertake an event like this tonight requires a lot of people and a lot of organizations. Many of those were acknowledged on the screen prior to this event and are listed in your program. But we want to give special recognition and very special thanks to Santa Barbara City College for making the Garvin Theater available to us tonight. If you haven't done so already, this is the time when I'm going to ask you all to turn off your cell phones. The speaker also asks that there will be no tweeting during the talk. After Pat's talk, there will be a short question and answer period, and then book sales and a book signing in the lobby, as well as a reception and a photo booth outside so that you can retain a special memory. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce my new friend, Andrew Medler of the Chicago Public Library and president of the Association for Library Service to Children.
Thank you, Jessica. The families of Santa Barbara are very lucky indeed. Another round of applause for my new friend, please. Good evening. I am Andrew, and I am proud to be the president of the Association for Library Service to Children, also known as ALSC. Fewer syllables there. We are the folks who bring you the Newbery and Caldecott Medal Awards every year, and also offer a plethora of other programs and professional services in the areas of advocacy, education, and access to children's librarians all over the world, as we work to build a better future for children through libraries. Thank you. I am so delighted to be here to personally welcome all of you to the 2016 Mayhill Arbuthnot Honor Lecture as we gather for an evening of book joy. I'm particularly joyful that we come together during National Library Week, which is an annual celebration of the daily transformative contributions of our nation's libraries and librarians and library workers, and a reminder to all of us to advocate for the use and support of all kinds of libraries in all communities all year long. I have personally celebrated National Library Week by visiting libraries in 5 different states from coast to coast, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight in this community, and want to thank the Santa Barbara Public Library System, the Santa Barbara City College, and the University of California at Santa Barbara. And to all of you for coming. Another round of applause for yourselves. You are all the latest in a long line of lovers of children's literature who have come together for this lecture since 1969 as a tribute to its namesake, an esteemed author, editor, critic, anthologist, and educator, originally from Mason City, Iowa. These lectures have been given by familiar names such as Marie Sendak, Walter Dean Myers, Philip Pullman, Lois Lowry, and now the singular Pat Mora. Indeed. Gracias, Pat, por todas sus contribuciones importantes a la juventud y las bibliotecas también. Gracias. Now, I suspect that if Mayhill Arbuthnot's name doesn't ring a bell to you quite as loudly as these other names I've just mentioned, that you may be surprised how much you really do know her. If you learn to read from the Dick and Jane books, then you have already encountered Mayhill Arbuthnot, who co-authored these iconic beginning readers. If you learn to love reading, anyone in the house love reading? All right, if you learn to love reading, We're going to get that one person up there who didn't raise their hand. If you learned to love reading, you might have met May again through the pages of the wonderful Arbuthnot anthology of children's literature, with its selection of the best children's fiction and nonfiction from around the world. If your career has been devoted to children's literacy, let's see a show of hands, then you were likely taught by May through her classic textbook, Children and Books. And of course, all of you now know her for this very lecture that we're gathered for tonight, which every year invites an author, critic, librarian, historian, or teacher of children's literature of any country from around the world to prepare and present a paper considered to be a significant contribution to the field of children's literature. The enviable duty of selecting this individual, as well as the site for this lecture, well done indeed, falls to a committee of ALSC. And this year's committee members, who I'm about to introduce by name, asked to stand, and then ask all of you to, of course, hold your applause until all have been recognized, are as follows. Tracy Alley, Madeira Elementary School, Cincinnati, Ohio. Holly Camino, Medina County District Library, Medina, Ohio. Elizabeth Poe, Morgantown, West Virginia. And our absent friend, Cindy Welch, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee. And this committee has been brilliantly led by their chair, Julie Corsaro of Williamsburg, Virginia. A round of applause, please, for all of them. Thank you all for a job well done. And I would now like to invite Julie to the podium to introduce our distinguished 2016 May Hill Arbuthnot Honor Lecturer. Julie?
Good evening. Buenas noches. On behalf of the May Hill Arbuthnot Committee and the Association for Library Service to Children, a division of the American Library Association, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce the 2000 Honor Lecturer, Pat Mora. Born and raised bilingual and bicultural in a book-filled home in El Paso, Texas, Pat worked as a university administrator and museum director before focusing on writing. Her first picture book for children, A Birthday Basket for Tia, was published in 1992 when there were almost no books for young people that represented the Latino cultural experience. An engaging tale about a young girl trying to find the perfect present for her great-aunt's 90th birthday. It has many of the distinctive elements we have come to expect from Pat's more than 3 dozen award-winning books for young people. Lyrical writing, a celebration of Spanish and English language, a warm and loving family, and Mexican-American traditions. Not content to simply write wonderful stories and poems for children, Pat has long been concerned about providing young people with the kind of rich literary experiences she enjoyed and benefited from as a child. Inspired by Children's Day, a holiday in Mexico that honors the importance and well-being of the young, she established the Family Literacy Initiative, El Día de los Niños, El Día de los Libros, Children's Day, Book Day. Commonly called DIA, and observing its 20th anniversary this year with celebrations across the country, DIA emphasizes the importance of books and reading for all children from all backgrounds every day of the year. As the founder of and ambassador for DIA, Pat travels the country giving workshops and presentations about bookjoy, the term she coined for the pleasures of reading. She encourages parents, teachers, librarians, and other caregivers to share stories and rhymes with children, beginning at birth and continuing throughout their formative years. Understanding how important it is that all children see their lives reflected in books, Pat Mora continues to write stories in verse based in the details of her experiences and imaginings that resonate with all of us. For her distinguished contributions to children's literature and keeping her poem, Jazzy Duet, which you got in your program, at hand, please join me in welcoming the pioneering author, brilliant poet, tireless literacy advocate, and inspirational educator, Pat Mora.
Well, how do you respond to that? Good evening, bienvenidos. So the organizers suggested that I speak for about 3 hours. Just kidding. On September 29th, 2014, I received a special email. It was from friendly Hannah Ehrlich at Lee and Low Books, who forwarded a lovely and affirming message from Julie Corsaro. I was speechless and so grateful at what Julie had written. No, she wasn't going to bring me coconut cake, nor a carrot cake, which also would have made me smile. Julie was informing me that I'd been chosen to deliver the 2016 Arbuthnot lecture. I sat in my small Santa Fe atrium, feeling stunned. Me? Initially, I couldn't even share the news. I just sat there with my houseplants, who are used to and very tolerant of my ways. Silently, those plants can also be very demanding. Many people deserve credit for this special event. I have expressed my gracias personally. Presentations like this are opportunities to meditate, reflect, ponder. So muchas gracias to the Association for Library Services to Children and an active DIA partner, and to the committee for this occasion. Thanks to all of you, this beautiful audience, who are here expanding our reach, since ideally we will all be a bit changed by being together this evening. I always learn from audiences. I began keeping a scribbly journal that afternoon, September 29th, 2014, reminders of ideas I wanted to include for our conversation this evening. For months then, I have been thinking about you. Even recently, as my husband and I this is that moment of panic. Okay, we need to go back. Even recently, as my husband and I traveled to Madrid to visit my daughter and son-in-law, I love the picture on the side. El gran libro del sándwich americano. Our contribution to culinary wonders. So that morning, I chatted particularly with Libby, who is my lawyer co-author, about what I'd been thinking about for tonight. We chatted when we walked to beautiful Retiro Park, 3 adults and 2 umbrellas. By the time we arrived at our second destination, a bookstore, writers visit bookstores and children's writers visit the children's section, we were drenched. The bookstore La Central was also celebrating its 20th anniversary. We smiled at this image at the front of the store. I think of us as a community for this hour or so, thinking together about the importance of children, all our children, bundles of promise, who all deserve and need to become readers for their sake and ours. In one sense, it doesn't seem such a lofty goal for the world's most powerful nation. We have such an impressive national education and library systems, and a long tradition of aspiring to serve families in all our states and to be exemplars of the power of huge and small libraries creatively serving their patrons. We are also here to ponder the complex world of children's books, a very different world from that of May Hill Arbuthnot. But I think she'd be excited by our challenges. Sounds and feels like a heavy load, but what joy we have to share. Book joy, alegría en los libros. Think with me about your book joy story while I briefly tell you mine. So these dear people, my parents, my kids, my husband, always come with me when I come to a mic. I have loved public speaking since I was a little girl, and so did my mother, and I'm always surprised to read that it's one of the great fears of most Americans, going to a mic to speak, but I always feel like, I'm not up here alone. I have all of these wonderful people and all of the previous generations with me. I was born and grew up in El Paso, Texas, an area once a part of Mexico, the neighboring country visible across the Rio Grande. I am the oldest, and 3 might have said the bossiest of 4 children. Do not believe everything they say. My parents were hardworking, bilingual, wonderful. Dad was born in Mexico, came to El Paso at a young age with his family, just walking across the border then, fleeing the Mexican Revolution. Years later, he opened his own small optical company. And Mom, born in El Paso, fabulously articulate in English and Spanish, helped as she could, but devoted most of her energies to her children. None of my grandparents spoke English. Due to the depression, neither of my parents had the opportunity to attend college. But Mom was a reader. Many of the children we're thinking about this evening may have wonderful parents, but not all read nor can read. They may be illiterate, or they may be powerful readers in their own home language, but not in English. They may not, as a child, have experienced the magic in books or libraries. Such parents need our help. As you think of the life journey that has brought you here tonight, relax into your early reading memories. I hope you have some. Not all adults do. Mine are delicious. I'm in the room I shared with my sister Sissy in the rock house my father built instead of taking Mom on a honeymoon. Whoops. I'm perhaps in the 2nd grade and home from school with a slight cold. My dear maternal grandmother, Mamande, brings me a bowl of Campbell's tomato soup and oyster crackers. She sits and pats the hand of her first grandchild, moi. I'm extremely comfortable in my bed years ago, and I pulled down from the shelf behind me this book. I turn the pages, enjoying the illustrations and delighting in the words. In language, I read the little turtle, sing a song of sixpence, and oh, the friendly cow all red and white, I love with all my heart. And I was loving that cow in the desert, remember? Although Robert Louis Stevenson might have seen a red and white cow, I certainly hadn't and haven't. The wonder of joy, of words, sounds, images. I was transported, and hope you have been too, year after year. I'll have that delicious experience again tonight and tomorrow night, sans tomato soup. Preparing to be with you reminded me that reading is a privilege. Reading in 2 languages, a double privilege. The joy of words and languages. I smile at Virginia Woolf's words. When the day of judgment dawns and people, great and small, come marching to receive their heavenly rewards, the Almighty will gaze upon the mere bookworms and say to Peter, "Look, these need no rewards. We have nothing to give them. They have loved reading." We certainly think we're more hip than bookworms today, but readers know what Woolf means. It may have been 1996 when I was writing my family memoir, House of Houses, the same year we started DIA, that I decided to purchase a used set of childcraft books, copyright date 1947. Some I'd favored more than others. In preparing to be with you for the first time, I skimmed the preface and saw May Hill Arbuthnot in the list of those thanked for their assistance. I'm grateful to her too. The words describing the Arbuthnot lecture, significant contribution to the field of children's literature, have weighed on me. I tried to distract myself with the word field that took me back to the pastoral scene, the cow all red and white, and the pleasure of reading as a child, and the pleasure of having adults read to me. The aunt who's the star of my first children's book, A Birthday Basket for Tia, a book that turns 25 next year, came to this country with her maternal family during the Mexican Revolution. No one spoke English, and yet, by the time my sister and I were young readers, that beloved aunt would sit one of us on each side and read us Nancy Drew mysteries. The power of love. You and I firmly believe that words and languages offer us both pleasure and power. The power to express ourselves, defend ourselves and others, the power to do research and teach ourselves skills, to entertain ourselves, to tease others, to understand human and environmental complexity, to increase our knowledge and ideally our wisdom. Readers know there can be wealth in books. What power we find in the small symbols on the pages in all languages. Wealth that as readers, many of us want to share. We need to continue to explore how best to do that. Words free as confetti. Come, words, come in your every color. I'll toss you in storm or breeze. I'll say you, taste you sweet as plump plums, bitter as old lemons. I'll sniff you words, warm as almonds or tart as apple red. Feel you green and soft as new grass, light white as dandelion plumes, or thorn gray as cactus, heavy as black cement, cold as blue icicles, warm as abuelita's yellow lap. I'll hear you words loud as sea roar's purple crash, hushed as gatitos, curled in sleep as the last gold lullaby. I'll see you long and dark as tunnels, bright as rainbows, playful as chestnut wind. I'll watch you, words, rise and dance and spin. I'll say you in English and Spanish. I'll find you, hold you, toss you. I'm free too. I say, yo soy libre. I am free, free, free as confetti. In 1945, the Chilean author, educator, diplomat, an international advocate for children and women, Gabriela Mistral, was the first Latin American woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize. She used her prize money to buy a small home in Santa Barbara. Gabriela Mistral also wrote for children and said of children's poetry, poesía que si no se canta, podría cantarse. Poetry that if not sung, could be sung. When I speak to audiences about the need for quiet to develop our creativity, I see apprehension. But it's hard to think, write, or read deeply without quiet. And ours can be a noisy media world. Music or TV always on. The emphasis on celebrities and consuming. Working too much and then being addicted to plugging in and zoning out. I see fewer adults reading at airports, reading books, that is, in any format. Sound bites seem awfully popular. Who's going to be setting our critical national priorities and policies? I wonder if, like the environmental movement and the healthy foods movement, in the spirit of DIA, we need an exciting and excited reading movement in the United States today. A movement with a sense of urgency, a reading or bookjoy movement or initiative with compelling vision and action. Let's read, or America reads, or Reading Rocks. Might a new administration provide a grand opportunity? Might the American Library Association want to lead gathering collaborators and funders for the common good? But we are here tonight to think about children and books and how vital literacy and the enjoyment of books is in their future. I have never been asked to be ashamed of speaking English, but in subtle and not so subtle ways, I've been nudged to be ashamed of speaking Spanish, of being of Mexican descent. Spanish is the second most spoken language in our country, and languages are cultural wealth. Of our 20 million children under 5, 1 in 4 is Latino. Of course we want all of our children to speak English well and to savor reading in English. We also want them to be proud of their home languages, as we are. You can pick whatever gender you want. Russian dolls tend to come in one gender. Our adult bodies often, not always, protect our young selves inside. For a few moments, I want you to connect with yourself in first grade. All that vulnerability. We have armor, but the children we are thinking about don't. I began writing children's books when, in reading to my 3 children, I fell in love with the form. Connected to poetry, my favorite genre, whether I'm writing for children or adults. It's a thrill to see a child or a family reading one of the books I wrote. The journey has not been easy, and yet I feel fortunate that some of my manuscripts have been published, and that I'm able to celebrate languages and words. Yum. I wish I were trilingual. I've been a mom, teacher, university administrator, and writer, but I never expected to become a literacy advocate. By 1996, I was beginning to realize how many children had no books and no connections to libraries or to our library tradition. I was realizing that what I had taken for granted, such as enjoying the public library, books at home, the summer reading club, were foreign and intimidating to some children and families. I also knew that I wouldn't be me without books. And I wanted, as you want, that reading pleasure for children as we want them to be fed, safe, healthy, and enjoying the outdoors. We care about the well-being of our diverse kiddos. We want them to have a fair chance to develop and contribute their talents, to lead fulfilling lives. The poet Mary Oliver says she had an insufficient childhood. Is that what we want for any of our young? An insufficient childhood? No. We want our young to thrive. That's my darling, who lives in Austin. This year, for Dia's 20th anniversary, I wrote a gift poem of short verses, 20 Ways of Looking at a Child, available on my site, a couple of the verses related to books, and I must say, Bonnie is a huge new inspiration in my life. Her theory is, if you want a bear to read with you, drag the bear over. So a few of the verses from 20 Ways of Looking at a Child. Page after page, the child relaxes. Friendly predictability. Pointing at pictures, the child confidently tells her grandmother the story. Bookjoy, alegría en los libros. 20 years ago, when I learned about the Mexican celebration of April 30th as El Día del Niño, I proposed that in this country, we celebrate all our children and that we link them to books. We now know that children need to be active readers by the 3rd grade, or they will struggle in schools. We know that failing cycle the embarrassment of not being able to read. And of course, many families feel that embarrassment also. Luckily, there is now a growing interest in the field of early literacy, although not always the budget to support this essential work. The DIA journey has taught me many lessons, including the price of being an advocate, and the importance of persistence and strong allies. Some are in this room. This evening, in the spirit of Mayhill Arbuthnot, of ALSC, and of Dia's 20th, I want us to focus on the need to be active advocates for significantly expanding our community of young readers. This is important for children's individual lives and for their families, and important to this country, the needs and talents of future generations. If more and more of our children don't develop their talents, what a loss to them and to us. It sounded like such a simple idea, celebrating all our children and linking them to Bookjoy. And my friends in Reforma, the National Association to Promote Library and Information Services to Latinos and Spanish-speaking, quickly supported the concept. Ever the optimist, I assumed when people heard about the idea, they would think, well, yes, we have Mother's Day and Father's Day. We need El Día de los Niños, el Día de los Libros. Was that the snag? Daring to propose the celebration in 2 languages? And soon in all of the languages our children speak? Children's Day Book Day, often known as Dia, which means day, to remind us of the dailiness of our commitment, and as the acronym DIA for Diversity in Action. Humans need reminders, and although we say that every day is DIA, and that our children need to be and deserve to be celebrated, we also need culminating April celebrations. My dream remains that this becomes an annual tradition and a part of our April calendar, like Mother's Day in May and Father's Day in June, that Children's Day Book Day, El Día de los Niños, el Día de los Libros, is celebrated at home, school, libraries, child care centers, universities, and parks in April. And I always say to people, no library or school would say, oh, we're not going to talk about Mother's Day this year because we have a really busy calendar. I mean, that just doesn't happen, right? And so that's the way I want people to feel about Children's Day Book Day, about DIA. I often smile when I see publicity about DIA around the country with lots of music and dancing. Fun is fun. I also stress that we want to show children and families in all languages how much fun books can be. I want children to have daily tactile experience of holding and savoring books. I want that for adults too. We want to build excitement about the reading habit. Yes, we want to clap for our young, all our young, and shape with them our excitement for being readers. We are creating a new tradition, a meaningful tradition. Ideally, we are also collaborating with our other literacy advocates. Given the challenge we face, we need all the help and zip we can get. If we agree that reading is a privilege, pleasure, and power, and we agree that many, including many in this room, work to expand, and I mean significantly expand, the community of young readers, expanding those ripples, what else can we do, since we know that too many of our young in this country are just not developing necessary literacy skills? Half the students in our public schools live in low-income homes and apartments. Part of the context for our work, daily challenges. Literacy is essential in our democracy. Voters need to be informed rather than merely swayed by advertising. DIA unites communities because of the celebration and because readers tend to be more engaged in community life, more likely to be volunteers. We believe that reading is important for all, but hard as we work are our strategies and efforts to nurture young readers as effective as they need to be. Reading, a privilege, pleasure, and power. I propose that nationally, as well as locally, more of us need to creatively and courageously, yes, courageously, establish new connections with those locally, regionally, and at the state level, nationally, of course, who share our goals. We need librarians, teachers, professors, child care workers, foundations, business people, families, publishers, working together, daring to create new networks because we so believe in our cause. More work, you may fairly ask? Have you seen my calendar? The more I ponder the challenge in 2016, though, the more I think that we won't succeed in expanding the community of young readers unless we expand the community of our allies, expanding our view of ourselves. We need new strategies to leave our silos, good as the work in those silos may be, relying on, but that's not the way we've done things, or that's not how we do things, can be polite impediments to necessary and vibrant change. Surely, the tensions in our nation proclaim the importance of growing a reading public. Given this significant challenge, don't we need to expand the group committed to this work? What are the impediments to collaboration? Time, money, wariness about the results. But what is our alternative if we are committed to an expansive reading vision? At the local level, first steps can be exploratory meetings, librarians, feeder schools, a beginning. We each start where we are, and together we grow the connections. I was recently at a campus in Texas at an early literacy conference. As always, I reminded the students going into education they need to be readers themselves. Reading needs PR agents. When I asked the organizers if they had invited the local librarians, I could see they were surprised by my question. If we intentionally establish ties with our literacy colleagues, think of the impact we could have. Among our necessary allies are our colleagues and friends in the publishing industry who donate books and create literacy awards for young readers. Unless a publisher is a nonprofit, publishing is a business. Maurice Sendak, in his Arbuthnot lecture, mentions publishing corporations. Like consumers in any field, we can participate in supporting what is published, a power we may not use consciously enough. I can be dense. Let me admit that it took me a quarter of a century to realize that if I'm in marketing and I need to sell books, I need to advertise in publications with readers who buy books. If I'm an editor and I publish diverse authors and the books only sell modestly, what happens to my job? How can our friends and colleagues in publishing join us in nurturing new readers, in exploring non-traditional markets, meeting potential consumers where they are? Much is cleverly marketed to children and families. We need a diverse publishing community that can explore new strategies for inspiring our children and their families to see books as wise investments. The movement, We Need Diverse Books, is contributing to the conversation. We believe in the power of story and the power of books. We look at this rich array, our children. If we could see around us tonight all the children's books published in this country last year, also a complex and beautiful array, what is the story that array tells our children about themselves? Do they see themselves and their families in those books? Do our children's books, so deeply important, a legacy, affirm that all our children matter? Surely we believe that there are amazingly talented U.S. Latino writers and illustrators, as well as African American, Asian, and Native American writers and illustrators. Yes, and we know, for example, that we have a growing Hispanic population. Yet, in 2015, about 3,400 children's books were published by U.S. publishers. Only 58 were by Latinos. 3,400 books, only 58 were by Latinos. Breaks my heart. Those who work with underserved families might have ideas for promoting books for them. But can publishers invest in listening, given the pressures of their industry? People in this country have ideas and answers, but often they are not the people we are used to listening to. I think of the preschool teacher who recently said to me that it made her sad, after exciting her students about books, that a shy girl said to her, "But my mother never reads me books." You and I know that her mom may be illiterate, may not read English, may never have been read to. The context for our work. We could have spent this entire evening on collaborative strategies for coaching and supporting families who are not readers and not familiar with our libraries. We need allies, and we can begin now in our own cities, regions, and national organizations. We have important work to do for our young and for this country. The challenge is to be persistent year after year. Our work is both patriotic and humanitarian. In 2008, I was named an honorary member of the American Library Association. What a surprise. I had been a teacher, but never a librarian. Thanks to Dia, however, for 20 years, I have gotten to know amazing librarians. Many librarians do not speak Spanish, but many so want their language speakers to feel welcome. Dia became an easy bridge, the Bookjoy Bridge. Together, cada día, every day, we're building a bridge to Bookjoy. Young and old stroll across it, chatting night and day. Together, cada día, every day. In many languages, libraries, families say, reading, a habit we enjoy. Together, cada día, every day, you and I build the bridge to Bookjoy. I think of a librarian at a school in Texas years ago who was so excited that a group of Spanish-speaking students was going to come to visit her library. She had everything ready, but was nervous. She greeted the children in Spanish, which made them smile. She said, after the program, I asked her why she was willing to do that. She said, when I was a little girl in Kentucky, I could hear music coming from the library. I didn't have shoes, and I would hide outside and listen to the music. I'm happy to make a fool of myself to help children feel welcome at my library, she said. I have met so many warm and generous librarians. Twice a week, I read ALA's online newsletter, American Libraries Direct, so I'm somewhat aware of the digital and social media changes, the innovations. I still wonder, though, if the lure of technology can distract us a bit from our mission, creating a national literacy community. Recently in Santa Fe, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor spoke about the importance of reading when she was growing up. I'm not convinced apps, although entertaining, will have the same impact. Many parents need our guidance. Within our DIA work twice a year, at the beginning of the academic year and again in January, we reach out to our network with reminders. Next year, I'm going to encourage our DIA community to involve other local, state, and literacy professionals and funders in the planning. With ALSC, we encourage family book clubs, seldom a challenge for private school or middle-class schools, but half of the students in our public schools come from low-income families with time and resource constraints. We cannot fully do our work of growing a nation of readers without the families. I'm delighted that First Book has joined our DIA community. What progress will we have made when, a year from now, some of you will enjoy the next Arbuthnot and the wonderful Jackie Woodson? We are all mutts, if you know what I mean. We all have ethnicities and cultures. We are all multicultural. Throughout history, civilizations have had power elites based on family, religion, skin color, physical prowess, language, gender, wealth, education. Our United States, however, was founded on the stirring concept that we are all created equal. Lady Gaga and many celebrities probably disagree. As our society works through its assumptions, habits, prejudices, we who work with children and care deeply about their futures can illustrate that we respect and value all their differences in our collaborative work. Librarians and educators create classics. What you use in story time, as examples and themes in programming, as exemplar texts for new librarians and students, in workshops and classes, librarians and educators create classics. I believe in your commitment to all our children. Last June, I was fortunate to be on a panel to honor Walter Dean Myers at the Marian Wright Edelman's Children Defense Fund Freedom Schools training in Knoxville. The event was high energy, and repeatedly in this conference center, thousands of diverse young people would start banging on the floor and burst into the following. Good job, good job. G-O-O-D-J-O-B, good job. I said good job. And you know, I really care about you that I did that. What Marian Wright Edelman and her team of trainers has done is build excitement about the challenges ahead. And I think in our own style, we need to do that too if we want together to invigorate our literacy initiatives. The event reminded me of the power of celebrations and of motivating others. Collectively, how do we share our reading power and change the present reading reality in our amazing country? Born in the American Southwest, I live in a beautiful place, Santa Fe, New Mexico, cold but beautiful. This is also a beautiful place. A child of the desert, I always find the ocean, all that water, all those waves, a source of fascination. And tonight, all of you have been a blessing. You have listened and thought with me. My guess is that unique and different as we each are, Many of us want, in our own way, to share the love of reading. I think about what the readers in this country could do together. I have many loves: family, laughter, the natural world, and I love words, reading them and playing with them on the page and in my presentations. Ashley Bryan, who creates wonderful art and text for children, always has audiences savor poetry out loud. So in the spirit of Dia and Ashley, let's have some bilingual fun. So pull out your bookmark. Now, usually when I do this, I say, okay, this half the room is going to do English, that half the room is going to do Spanish, and then I say, and you can't move. But tonight, we're all going to do it together. So if you have your bookmark in front of you, I hope. It's called Jazzy Duet, Dueto de Jazz. I'm going to read the Spanish through once, and then we'll do it all together and have a good time. It's a good time to remember, though, that this is what it's like for some of our students when they're learning English, although it's not as funny for them. Okay, so I'm going to read the Spanish. Juega con sonidos, improvisa, resbala a un río de música, rurro, rorro, un dueta, con la frondosa rima del árbol. Next line's the challenge. Con las castañuelas del grillo, con la copla lunar del coyote. Canta tú, canta, canta, canta. Okay, let's try it together. Do it with me. Don't leave me up here by myself now. You've got to. Ashley would say you've got to raise your voices, and he just stands up there, you know, like a good preacher. He wants everybody to raise the voices. Ready? Play. Do it with me. I don't wait for me to do it first. Do it with me. Play. Juega con sonidos. No. Uh-oh. We'll start again. I better pay attention. Play. Juega with sounds. Con sonidos. Improvise. Improvisa. Slide into the river of music. Resbala a un río de música. Slish, slash, rurro, rorro, a duet, un dueta, with trees' leafy rhyme, con la frondosa rima del árbol, with crickets' castanet clicks, con las castañuelas del grillo, with coyotes' moon croon, con la copla lunar del coyote. Sing tú, canta tú, sing, canta, sing, canta, sing, canta. Oh, yay! All right, we are going to have a little Q&A. Here comes Jessica, the new and exciting director of the Santa Barbara Public Library. Oh, they didn't give you questions? I can ask the audience questions, but they're not going to want that. So we're going to do Q&A for a few minutes, and then at the end, I'll make a final statement. And I'm so glad you all were here. All righty, Jessica.
Pat, that was so inspirational, and I am ready. Yes, let's give her a hand. Yes. I think all of us are ready to have a collective impact. Good. Thank you so much for that. So, Pat, which is the most satisfying genre that you write in?
Okay, well, poetry by far. You know, poetry by far. I always feel it's like I'm not a tennis player, but it would be like playing tennis. You have a very small area in which to do your work. And so my favorite button on the computer is delete. I was the kind in college when, the professor, I was an English major, the professor would say, I want you to do a 500-word essay. I'd think, well, I can come up with 200, but getting to 500 was going to be hard. So I prefer brevity. I prefer deleting. George O'Keeffe talks about the power of deletion, and I believe that.
What do you think it will take to change the publishers' attitudes?
Book sales. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? As I said, if I were a publisher, and I've always recommended having publishers at conferences on panels. It doesn't usually happen, but I can understand how they would say, hey, it's a business. I would also say to them, well, Coke is managing, McDonald's is managing, Honda's managing, the Latino population, to use that population, has $3 trillion in disposable income in this country. So it's not always that publishers don't care. But I do think because the publishing community isn't diverse, they haven't thought, how do we reach that demographic? Which is exactly what, believe me, the toy companies know. Watch those commercials, right? You're seeing diverse families, diverse kind of kids, because they know they want that demographic to buy. I want them to want to buy books.
This is an easy one. Tell us some of your favorite children's books.
Well, that's not so easy. I mean, I have so many. Yeah, no, I have so many favorite children's books. For example, they're not the really little ones. I talked about the really little ones. I fell in love with the Little House on the Prairie books before it was on television. I found the W's at the El Paso Public Library, and I was a member of that family. So I loved that whole series. It's probably terrible to admit, I also loved the Pollyanna books. And that's considered such an insult, like don't be a Pollyanna. But there was something about, I guess I have a sappy side. So there was something about them that must have appealed to me.
So now as a grown-up, what authors do you like reading?
Terrible to admit, but I tend to read adult fiction. I mean, I wasn't an English major by accident. It's really what I love. So it's not that I don't read children's books, and I love children's books, and I certainly read adult poetry too. But I would say there's something about. Hap was nice enough to take me to a bookstore yesterday because I finished my book coming out here, and I would have a heart attack if I got on that plane on Sunday and did not have a book. That would be very ugly. That cannot happen. And so I was talking to a rather impatient person at the bookstore, and she said, well, tell me what kind of books you like. And I said, well, I'm sort of a literary snob. I mean, to be honest, I said, I don't read mystery. I'm not interested in suspense. I said, I like a beautifully written novel. So that's my answer.
Thank you. And what is the favorite book that you have written?
Oh, the next book. I mean, that's all. Kids love that question, but it's the truth. I mean, my agent is here, Elizabeth, wherever you are. Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a real sacrifice for her to be here. And we had a brief dinner. And, of course, my excitement goes to the next book. I'm thinking about it. I'm dreaming about it. I'm hoping somebody will want to publish it. I mean, that's as hard now as it was at the beginning.
And that's a good follow-up to this question. What advice would you give somebody who wants to get into writing children's books?
I do have a book that answers the question. Okay. And it may be out there. It's called Zing, 7 Creativity Practices for Educators and Their Students. And in part, it's a memoir, but I wrote it because when I would go speak, particularly at campuses, the person who drove me to the airport would often say, well, my colleagues don't know this, but I want to do what you do. Tell me how to do it. And my husband and I had a wonderful experience. We were able to spend 3 to 4 weeks at this incredible castle in Italy, and it's what I decided that I was going to write there. And I didn't show it tonight, but I had a picture of the castle, and I was giving a presentation recently at the Tennessee Library Association, and one of the librarians said to me afterwards, wow, you really live in that castle? I said, oh no, sweetheart, I do not live in that castle. I was lucky to be there for 3 weeks. But anyway, that I hope answers the question. Okay.
Thank you. And what are your thoughts about reading to children digitally versus an actual print book?
I'm a real fan of print books. And I have to say, I mean, one need not be over the top. It's not like I would say never use a digital, although I almost say that to my daughter about my granddaughter, you know. I mean, I just think that children are tactile. And I think that, again, fortunes are being spent on making those devices appealing. But you and I know, I mean, I talked about the fact we all work too much, and I think there is this deep feeling in our country that I've worked so much, I now deserve to zone out. But if you're a parent, right, you're going to have to spend some time with those books, and that doesn't mean handing somebody an app. So I'm watching television, and I think I'm helping you because you've got a book-related app. I don't buy it, you know.
Thank you. We want to applaud that. So in this age of technology, how can we reach the Spanish-speaking demographic?
Well, I do think we have to meet them where they are. So that can mean looking at radio. I have at many conferences with publishers in the room, and I have many publishers who are my friends. I probably drive them crazy, but I mean, and I have said, would you consider some advertising? I mean, unfortunately, that's what I think is working with many of the products marketed to children, whether it's cereal or anything else. And a publisher may say, well, we don't have that kind of money. Well, then I would say, hire a marketing team that has people on it who will really research this demographic. You know, Procter & Gamble does focus groups about everything, you know, everything. So you can test something, you can see if it works, you can see what works. If you want it, you can do it. I believe that. If publishers really say, we want to reach this market, they can do it.
So now, can you tell us a bit about your process? Do you write in longhand or do you use a computer?
I do both. I tend to start on a yellow-lined tablet, sometimes with nonfiction, and I enjoy nonfiction. I more quickly will go to the computer. With poetry, I usually will start a poem, you know, longhand, and there's a point at which I want to see how it's going to look on the page. And that's what then tips me over. I do a lot of revision. And when I visit high schools, I always say to them, and this is the point, the following statement, when we will no longer be friends. My favorite part of the writing process is revision. So the remarks that I wrote tonight, I spent a lot of time revising them because you all were so important to me. You know, I wanted it to be really effective, so I revise a lot.
What has helped you become a better writer?
Reading.
Reading.
That's the basic thing. So many people want to write, they don't read. I mean, you have to be a reader. Yeah.
How are your illustrators chosen for your books?
It's a great question. If you're Oprah, you choose your illustrator, right? For the rest of mortals, it used to be, for example, I have a book about my mom, The Rainbow Tulip. And it used to be that an editor would write you a letter and say, I'm sure you will agree that so-and-so is the perfect illustrator for your book. And that was not a question. That was a statement, right? Now, at this point, thanks to the web, and because I've done it a while, for example, with the book that's out there, Water Rolls, Water Rises, incredible illustrations by a woman of Chinese descent who lives on the Orkney Islands or something. She's so hardy compared to me, and I'm such a wuss. But so we looked at the editor suggested some illustrators, and then I looked, and then the editor very graciously said to me, well, which is your favorite? I have a husband who is an anthropologist. Water is his main area, so we looked at it together. And so when I suggested Milo So, the editor said, well, we've never worked with her before, but we will try. Now, again, for a small press, financial issues, right? Because small presses have a different budget that they're going to be able to devote.
Okay, and this will be our final question. If you could just share what you love most about writing.
Well, I do think of it as play. You know, it's like a puzzle. I have all these words, you know, and I have words in English and Spanish. So I start out with an idea, and then, you know, I'm trying to listen to the music. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hear, you know, like a line of music. I'm trying to hear something that's going to begin to decide, this is good, this is not good. And so then I'll do a draft. And then I try not to look at the draft for a little bit, you know, because you want to give it a little time. And then I will come back and play again, and play again, and play again. And I feel inordinately privileged that I have been able to do this. I mean, inordinately privileged. I always say to audiences, there are at least 2 or 3 people in the room right now who are better writers than I am, and I never doubt that. And part of it is hard work, and part of it is luck. And it's like life, right? We all know people who were not dealt a good hand. And when it comes to writing, there is an element of luck. All right, well, I'm going to make a final couple of statements. You all have been fabulous and worth all the work. I have this daughter in Madrid who's a co-writer with me on 2 books, and she would say, do you really feel you need to keep working this hard on this? And I said, yes, because, you know, this is really important. It's going to get published. They're videotaping it. I mean, this was my chance. You gave me, the committee, and Alts gave me this chance, you know, to really think about this. What different challenges we face in 2016 than Mayhill Arbuthnot and her fellow teachers and writers faced as we strive to expand the diverse community of young readers. Together, remembering the privilege, pleasure, and power of reading, may we creatively and courageously collaborate with our fellow literacy partners, locally and nationally, and may we annually celebrate all our children and link them to Bookjoy.